Yeah, thanks, Melissa. Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's well, and you can hear me okay. So, as Melissa said, we're going to introduce to you a new product from Arbortext, the Arbortext Layout Editor. So, let's get started with the presentation. So, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to have a quick look at what it is and why we need it. Then we're going to look at some of the more technical parts of the product, like the files that are needed for Layout Editor, how you can work inside Layout Editor, the differences between Layout Editor and Layout Developer. So Layout Editor is based entirely on Layout Developer, but it's quite different. So we'll talk about those differences. We'll look at who Layout Editor is aimed at, so that you can identify whether you need or want Layout Editor. And then we'll look at how you can use Layout Editor, and this part will have a demonstration of how it works and how it fits in with the rest of the Arbortext ecosystem. So let's make a start. So what is Layout Editor? Well, Layout Editor came about from a discussion we were having with some partners, and we identified that a lot of our Layout Developer users, especially older ones from back in the 3v2 and APP days, were using Layout Developer, which is really a development tool, in a more sort of manual way. So they were building and finishing documents by hand. So Layout Developer is a bit of overkill for that kind of work. So what we talked about was providing a much more accessible tool, which doesn't have all the development bells and whistles, but is targeted for those people wanting to do manual page layout and document finishing work. So the term document finishing is the term that I use rather than saying touch-up. It is really about opening up a document that's been formatted automatically and then sort of putting the finishing touches on it. So you might want to tweak some formatting on a page, you might want to move a frame around, that kind of thing. So Layout Editor is based entirely on Layout Developer, so it has the same composition engine underneath everything, and the user interface looks very, very familiar. But when we get on to talking about the differences, you'll see that there are some significant differences in what is available to the user compared to Layout Developer. But the composition engine is the same, and as long as you have created a Layout Editor template or file, then you will get the same results. The big difference is that your template code, your styling code and your scripting and all that kind of stuff, which we consider development sort of territory, is protected. And it's protected so that your Layout Editor users can't go in there and make changes to styles. They can't change the way templates work, that kind of thing. That is a development kind of process and task. So we hide that stuff away from the Layout Editor users. What this means is that the integrity of the formatting rules, which are inside your document and your template, are protected. So there's no way of creating invalid output, because the users can't actually access that stuff to make those changes and make things look wrong. With Layout Editor and in the 12.1 release of Layout Developer, we've provided a bunch of tools to help users work within this constrained environment, and tools to allow template developers in Layout Developer to create customized and bespoke interfaces for Layout Editor users. So there are new tools that we provided in 12.1 which allow you to create custom toolbars. There's a feature that we provided in 12.0 to customize the blue bar, and a couple of other things in there as well to help the users work inside the Layout Editor environment. So that's what it is. Hopefully that's clear and people understand what it is and why it's there. So let's start looking at some of the more technical aspects and look at the files for Layout Editor. Now, for those of you who don't know, if you open a Layout Developer file in Notepad or something, you can edit that to your heart's content, which kind of defeats the object of what we're trying to do with Layout Editor. So Layout Editor has its own file types. So These file types are protected. You can't open them in Notepad and start fiddling around with them. And for that reason, they have their own extensions. So the .3le file extension is there for layout editor documents. So this is the equivalent to a 3D file in Layout Developer. Layout editor templates are 3LF. So these are the equivalent to 3F files in Layout Developer. And layout editor namespaces are 3LN. Okay. I think those are 3N in Layout Developer. My mind's gone blank. So these are the specific file types. Layout Developer can create, open, and work with all of those file types as if they're Layout Developer files. So if you're in Layout Developer, you can open them up and you can edit them, you can tweak them, you can do anything that you want. Inside Layout Editor, though, you can only open those file types. You can't open 3D files and Layout Developer files. You can only open Layout Editor files. So in Layout Developer, there are new methods and macros to save out documents as Layout Editor documents, so save out namespaces as Layout Editor namespaces, and to create Layout Editor templates. There's also a tool in there for creating Layout Editor libraries. So if you're using add-on libraries, which I encourage you to do for Layout Editor, and I'll talk about why in a little while, the library files themselves, as with Layout Developer files, you can open those in Notepad, you can fiddle around with them. Again, we don't want that in the Layout Editor environment, so the Layout Editor libraries are protected versions of your Layout Developer libraries. So there's a tool inside Layout Developer to create Layout Editor libraries and to be able to use those inside Layout Editor. If you wait for a few days, there will be a video up on YouTube which will talk about this and all the sort of more technical stuff which is in Layout Developer 12.1, and this sort of stuff will be covered in there, including the macros and commands which are used to create those files. The APP engine inside Publishing Engine, and we still call it the APP engine, so the APP is a composition engine. Layout Developer and Layout Editor use that composition engine. The APP engine that's inside Publishing Engine can create Layout Editor. So if you're using the print preview inside Editor, you can create Layout Editor files. If you're using APP within inside Publishing Engine, you can save out Layout Editor files as well. So that's great. So you can automate your document production processes and then save out Layout Editor files in order for them to be opened in Layout Editor and to be finished by a sort of desktop user further on down the line. And the last bullet on there is what I've stressed earlier on, that you cannot edit Layout Editor files inside text editors, which is a good thing. So when you're working inside Layout Editor, you are limited in what you can do and there's plenty of things that you can't do. So the first thing that you can do is that you can create and edit content. We specify that content is text streams, so .tx tags, XM tags, and XD tags. So those are plain text streams, XML content streams, and XML DOM tags. You can create and edit those to your heart's content. You can also create and load in raster graphics and object graphic tags. And you can also create and edit frames on the main page layer. So this is different from being able to select a layer and add a frame to that. That's development work, so we disallow that. But you can, on the main page layer, add as many frames as you like and put content into those. And if there are frames which are positioned on your main page layer, so if, for example, you've used anchor conditions to place floating frames, then you can grab those, move them around, or you can draw a new frame on there, put some content in, like a graphic, if you want to do that kind of thing. Users can also change the formatting within the content stream. So they cannot access styles which have been created, but they can highlight text and apply formatting. Now we provide a toolbar as part of Layout Editor, which provides some basic tools, but this is really provided as an example of what you can do using the JavaScript toolbars and JavaScript actions that we provided in 12.1. So I'll show you how this stuff works a little bit later, but you can, for example, apply bold, underline, that kind of thing, or insert a table or insert a graphic. These things use the new feature insert markup, which was provided in 12.1. And insert markup is the tool which allows you to specify a little action with an optional pop-up dialog box, which is automatically generated to insert a string or strings inside your content where your cursor is. So you can tell Layout Developer or Layout Editor that you want to insert some specific markup that you've specified or some processing instructions that you've specified into that content, and it's up to you to be able to configure that to match your DTD and that kind of thing. So when we come on to the demo a little bit later, I'll show you how that stuff works. I've already mentioned that you can add, edit and rearrange frames on the main page layer. There is a new toolbar which is active in page mode, and that's this one over here on the right, which lets you create a new frame, which is this one. You can load content into that frame, and then you can change the stacking order of the frames which are on the page, which are what these icons are for. So previous to 12.1, you could only send frames to the back or bring them to the front, but a little extension to the command which does that now lets you sort of step back individual steps if you want to do that. So if you've got, say, 5 frames on a page, different levels of stacking, you can move the selected frame back through that level of stacking using those buttons there. So there's some new text tools which we've provided to make it easier to work with XML. This applies to both Layout Developer and Layout Editor. The first one is the pretty print or normalized space idea. Those are these two icons over here on the right of the Stream Properties toolbar. So you can click on the pretty print icon to make your XML a lot easier to read, and that will indent the hierarchy nicely for you. Or you can normalize the space to revert it back to a single long line of text. If you do switch to the different modes, the white space avoiding flags for the text stream are changed so that it doesn't have any effect on the output, which is handy. The other thing which we provided in 12.1 and is apparent in Layout Editor is this idea over here on the right-hand side, which is to auto-indent. So if you're in Layout Developer editing JavaScript or XML, or if you're in Layout Editor and you're editing just XML, then if you want to insert a new paragraph and you'll say 6 levels of nesting deep inside your hierarchy, if you hit return with auto-indent on, it'll automatically indent the new line to the same depth that the previous line was on. So it's just a little helper to make sure that you're not wasting your time typing spaces to make your content look pretty. So we provided a set of tools. I kind of mentioned these a little bit already to allow template developers to create custom interfaces in Layout Editor. The idea behind this is that we provide tools to let template developers make their end users, the Layout Editor users, more productive. So it's up to them, the template developers, to create toolbars which provide the tools that people need, create insert markup definitions for doing things like inserting the correct version of markup necessary for bold and italic, that kind of thing. And there's also, as I said, provided in 12.0, this blue bar customization. And I'll show you something which I've created for the blue bar customization in a little while when you do the demo to show you what sort of thing can be achieved there. As I mentioned earlier, the composition engine is the same, so all the output that you can generate from Layout Developer, you can generate from Layout Editor. We haven't hidden anything away, so you can still output your different flavors of PDF as well as PNGs if you want to, or SVG. Something I forgot to mention up here is that the text properties menus and dialogues, so if you are in Layout Editor and you go to bring up the style properties dialog box, that will now insert a processing instruction, the X3B2 layout processing instruction, instead of, for example, the TH processing instruction for text type. The reason behind that is that Layout Editor will only process X3B2 layout processing instructions. It will ignore any other processing instructions which are in the content. There's a reason for this, and the reason is that with a lot of layout developers processing instructions, you can execute code. I don't know if you know that, but you can execute JavaScript, you can execute show strings and all this kind of stuff, call mini scripts. We consider that to be development stuff rather than layout editor stuff, and so layout editor inserts a special processing instruction, which is the only one which will get processed. So to make it work, we've customized the menus and dialogues so that it inserts the X3B2 layout processing instruction. And you'll see an example of this too when I do the demonstration at the end. So the main differences then between Layout Developer and Layout Editor, firstly is styling. So Layout Editor users cannot create new styles or access template code. And you'll see when I talk about tag access, they don't have access to those tags. And the text properties menus and dialog boxes insert the X3B2 layout processing instruction. A change for this for Layout Editor is that the paragraph properties menu and dialogues doesn't insert the lump in Layout Editor. It inserts the individual processing instructions. So no longer are in Layout Editor things looking for the lump, which is good because that lump is weird and mysterious. And putting in the processing instructions is a much better way of doing things. Macro use is also limited in Layout Editor. Again, most of the macros that you would try and do are what we would consider development tasks. So those have been limited. That's not to say all of them can't be accessed or run, but many of them cannot be run from the macro bar. They can be run from scripts. So Layout Editor is aware of where the macro is being called from. So if it's in a script that's been created by a template developer, then it could be run from there. The documentation that's provided with Layout Editor will give a big table of which macros can and can't be used inside Layout Editor. Tag access is also limited in Layout Editor. So Layout Editor users can create content, as I described earlier, but they can't access and see template code. The tags are still in there, but they just don't show up in any lists. If you want to change things which are template code, then the template developer is going to need to provide tools which do that using scripts and stuff and custom dialog boxes, rather than letting the Layout Editor user access that stuff. We've also made changes to the system files. Again, with system files, you could open them up, you can hack them about a bit and do some custom stuff. So we've limited the number of system files which are available in Layout Editor, again, to restrict and to protect your code. Our recommendation is that people use add-on libraries in order to deploy customizations to the menus and dialog boxes and that kind of stuff if they want to. If they want to control the strings, do it from libraries. So those are the significant differences. The emphasis really is on providing a editor tool, not a developer tool. Okay, so development tasks are contained within Layout Developer. Editing tasks are contained within Layout Editor. So who do we anticipate that Layout Editor is for then? So as I mentioned at the very beginning, the need for Layout Editor came out of a discussion where we're talking about a lot of people who they might have a small team of layout developer, template developers, but lots of users who are using it as in a desktop capacity to either create documents from templates or to edit formatted documents. So those are really the targeted users for Layout Editor. And to reflect the fact that it doesn't have any of the Layout Developer features and functions in it, it's at a much lower cost than the Layout Developer. It's something like a quarter or a fifth of the cost of Layout Developer. So if you need to tweak a formatted document, or if you want to have a template which guides you through the document creation process and you're not actually wanting to create new styles and that kind of thing, then Layout Editor is the product for you. As I've mentioned, you can create Layout Editor files from Layout Developer. So if you've got a server version of Layout Developer, you can save out Layout Editor files from there and give those to your Layout Editor users. Or you can also create them from Publishing Engine if you're using the larger Arbortext ecosystem and you've got Editor and Publishing Engine, that kind of thing. You can save out Layout Editor files using your Layout Developer templates. So ideally, customers will have a team of template developers, or they'll have easy access to partners who can provide templates and documents for Layout Editor. But they'll also have lots of desktop users who want to use those templates to work on documents and to finish them. And some examples of the types of customers that this is targeted for are kind of given there in the list below. So I hope that makes sense. So where does Layout Developer and Layout Editor fit into that ecosystem? Well, let's start over here on the top left. So this is the traditional Layout Developer world where people will create templates. And they might also create documents which they can give to the Layout Editor users. So if they're going to go the automated route, they would create a template file that they deploy within Publishing Engine. And then your content authors using Arbortext Editor will fire XML at that process, make a request using the template as the style sheet, and out will pop either a PDF or a Layout Editor file. Layout Editor users then can use that Layout Editor file to finish the document and create their PDF output from that. Alternatively, your template developer could create a Layout Editor template, and this is for those customers and users who want to create the whole document in a desktop environment rather than using a server for it. Then they would provide those Layout Editor users with a 3LF file. That 3LF file will contain all the scripting processes necessary for creating that document, and then a bunch of tools which allow them to work with that document to finish it off. The template developer would also create libraries for deployment to their Layout Editor users as well, and that's perfectly fine. So I hope that makes sense. So how does that fit into the sort of PTC view of things? Well, here on the create side of the description, we have the develop style sheets part, and this is the Layout Developer world where templates are developed for deployment to Publishing Engine and that kind of thing. And over here on the right-hand side, we have this idea of advanced layout development where people can open their documents in Layout Developer or Layout Editor and make their final changes. And this is all part of the digital thread that we like to talk about inside PTC. So has anybody got any questions on that before I move on to a demo?
Nope, no questions at this time.
Doesn't look like it. Cool. So this is the bit that I always get nervous about, doing a live demo. So let's get on with it and hope everything works. So here we are in Arbortext Editor. So this is a document that we use internally for producing our data sheets. So our data sheets are chunks of information that we provide to customers about what our products are and that kind of thing. We produce all our data sheets and that kind of stuff in-house using our own products, which is great. And this is an example of one that we do, one that we use. So here you can see this is XML. I've created this in Editor against a schema, which we've written to make this easy. And from here, I can go to print preview. And when I do the print preview, I will select my 3F, my template, which I've created specifically for producing the data sheets. And it's been created in such a way that it allows me to tweak the pages by hand manually. So there's a few things which are slightly different about this to normal, like a styler-based template, and maybe you'll see where those differences are when we come on to doing it. So if I open that, hit OK, it'll produce the pages. Let me make that fit the page. So you can see here in the print preview, it's done a pretty good job of formatting the pages. Did it fairly quickly because it's a native layout developer template. So it's always going to be nice and quick. And you can see on here that we got some floating figures, we've got some inline figures, and it's made a pretty good job. Except on page 2. We don't like page 2 because it's got this big hole here of white space, which is like spoiling the aesthetics of the page. So what we want to do is open that in Layout Editor, and to do that I'm going to save the file. So I'm going to save it out using the tsave le macro and create a layout editor file. So the tsave le macro creates a specific, causes some specific code to create the layout editor file. So I want to create that. So now I've saved it out. Now I can open up layout editor, which I have it open over here, and I can open that file. So this is the same file that I've just saved out. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Layout Developer, let me talk you through a couple of things. This panel here is the WYSIWYG view. So this thing that looks like a page is a page. Let me just quickly format to get the page number in. This is a WYSIWYG view of the page. You can click in the WYSIWYG view and you can see over here on the right hand side in the yellow bar or the edit bar, it's taken me to the XML content for that bit of text inside here. So this is the same content. If I select something over here, it highlights over here in the yellow bar. If I select something in the yellow bar, it highlights it over here in the WYSIWYG view. It's the same thing, it's just a different representation of it. One of the great things about Layout Developer is that we don't do anything by default. We don't mess around with the XML that is being produced. Okay, so this is important to remember because you can then, if you make changes to this, you can save out that XML and re-import it into your system. Okay, so we don't change it by default. Sometimes you have to if the output is very much different from the structure of the XML that you've got, but as a rule, we don't do that. So this is the yellow bar. Let me show you, this is the mode to print, and then I can normalize the space again. So these two things here make it a lot easier to read. And if I want to put it back to a single line of XML, then I can do that too. Over here on the left-hand side is what we call the blue bar or the left bar. And this is showing a customization that I've created specifically for this demo, which shows the XML hierarchy. So when I click around in the content, you can see that this hierarchy changes to show you where I am, but it also, based on a configuration tag inside this template, will show you what's allowed within that position. So within section, I can have these elements, and siblings of section are these elements. This is based on a configuration file. If you like the look of this, give me a shout and I'll send you this document so you can have it for yourself. I'm not precious about it or anything. So up here we have the toolbar. Here's the text toolbar I was mentioning, but if I switch to page mode, it changes the toolbar to the page mode toolbar. Let's wander down through the document. There's that page that we want to come back and sort out in a little while. And if I go to this page, you can see, if I turn on guides, you can see that there's a frame here. And just to show you that I wasn't kidding, I can grab hold of that frame and I can move it about inside the document. So if I don't like the position of it or I don't like the size of the frame, I can do that and I can fine tune my output to make it look pretty. So let's go back up here. Let's have a look. Let's get back into text mode. If I, for example, want to make the word information bold, then I can use this and it will insert the markup that I've specified for this DTD to make it bold. So it's that easy now inside Layout Editor to apply your formatting changes. We could also do something about this paragraph here. So I want to save some space, save some lines in order to bring this chunk of text back into this space here. So one thing I can do is to change the formatting of this paragraph in order to save this word, and saving this word should make enough space to bring back this stuff, because keeps us stopping it at the moment. So the reason for this bit over here is that I can select all the text in that paragraph node. And then using this option, I can specify the text width. Now this is a customization of the out-of-the-box text width insert markup definition. So with insert markup, these dialog boxes are automatically generated. There's no need inside Layout Developer now to create each and every individual dialog box for your definitions. You can just let Layout Developer do that, and you do that using the insert markup tool. I've customized the list of available properties. So I've done this so that you can show that you can customize this drop-down list. I'm going to apply this formatting, and what that's going to do is apply the X2 layout text width processing instruction to that paragraph to pull the line, to just change the formatting slightly, pull the word back to allow this stuff to go in here. Okay, so hooray, I've saved a line, pulled this back, and if you can imagine this, doing this kind of work in a big document, you might save 4 or 5 pages at the end of the document, which could save your publisher, tens of thousands of pounds potentially, which is what we want. The other thing that we can do inside here is I can insert a graphic. So I might want to keep this features section up here at the top of the right-hand page. So if I insert a graphic into this place to fill up this white space that was here, then that's another way of doing it. So this insert markup definition allows me to select a file. So there's a file type insert markup definition thing, which will give you a file type, and you can specify the type of file you're looking for. If I hit OK, you can see it's just inserted the graphic in there automatically. And in the text, it's added the correct markup, which is this stuff here, for the DTD, which is for this document. So again, these things are all about making it easy to do this kind of manual process. And you can customize the markup which gets generated. The graphic tag behind the scene is the thing which is loading the graphic from this location. And this graphic is now part of the document. So if I save the document and open it up again, this graphic is still here. So if I've made these changes, so I've inserted my graphic, I want to replicate that back in my XML. So I can then export this XML stream using the save text macro or instructions, or I can just copy and paste it back into Editor to reflect the changes that I've made to the content. So if I've applied these formatting changes to squeeze lines back, I have the option to remove these processing instructions or to keep them in there, so that next time Layout Editor sees this chunk of text, it's going to apply those formatting changes to it. And there, I think that is everything I wanted to show inside that demo. So as I said, if you want to have a copy of this, to see what I've done over here in the blue bar and to see the customizations that I've made to these insert markup definitions, then give me a shout. I'm sure everybody here knows my email address. I can be reached through the user group, and I can send you those things. So let's get back to the presentation. Where are we? There we are. So there is everything that I wanted to show you.